Hello and welcome back once again to another AOR Season 8 F1 League race recap, this time for the penultimate race of the season, the United States Grand Prix at the Circuit of the Americas, a place that saw an historic first and only win for Randy McScrandy in Season 7, after a cracking race back then, and hopefully this will be no different. Now let's look at how the drivers will line up on the grid for this race. And once again we got this man, TRL Rosberg, on pole position, his 4th pole in a row and 11th overall in the season. And just under 0.2 of a second behind him, TRL Limitless, who will line up on the front row as well after his disaster last time out in Abu Dhabi. And then in 3rd we got a man making a return visit to the league, F1 X360, whose last race was in the Spanish Grand Prix of Season 7, and he will line up alongside his more established teammate for this season, Citizen IV. Below them, Ricky C and Leobot both had solid qualifying performances with 5th and 6th, and then TRL Maisie not far off in 7th, but probably slightly disappointing for KPTK and Broshek in 8th and 9th, and especially the championship leader, X-Matty G, starting all the way down in 10th. Fisi 91 and TRL Martin will both start outside the top 10, as will both of the Caterhams, and also the Living Dead, who did not set a time. So let's dive in and see what unfolded in the race for this Season 8 United States Grand Prix. So, a very rainy start to the race in Austin, with all 15 drivers starting the race on the intermediate tires, deciding in their mind how to approach the very tricky uphill turn 1, which often sees lots of action at the start of the race. The race leader, TRL Rosberg, seemed to get a good launch off the line, but would be having the outside line on Limitless through turn 1, and Ricky C also got a great start, diving in between the two Saubers into the corner, everyone doing really well to leave each other room, but Ricky C squeezing through in the middle, while the top two also side by side ahead, TRL Rosberg seemingly just about hanging on from Limitless, and Citizen choosing to give way for his new teammate Krookie, instead of going side by side into the S's, which probably wouldn't have been the best idea. Here's how the first corner looked from KPTK's view, and you can see how many cars there are everywhere. X-Matty G diving up the inside to gain a position, TRL Martin going round the outside, and KPTK having dropped 3 places off the start, and even got challenged by his teammate Fisi coming towards the S's, but he did not want any of that, with a bit of a squeeze telling the Norwegian to get back in his place. But one man that was not satisfied with his current place was Ricky C, who challenged TRL Limitless, coming towards the hairpin of turn 11, but he just wasn't far enough alongside to get up the inside into the corner. Tried to slip by on the exit, but Limitless, with a better line and the traction, managed to keep the Irishman at bay for now. And a bit further on in the lap, the midfield was really starting to bunch up. KPTK following Maisie on the outside line through turn 16, with TRL Martin on the inside, and with fantastic car placement and throttle control out of the exit, the Williams driver pulled off a great overtake to move up into the points. But that would not be the case for long, as coming into the final corner, KPTK received a tap in the back from TRL Martin, the Torosso seemingly missing his braking point, and as a result they both dropped places to Fisi and the Living Dead. But to be fair to Martin, there might have been some lag going on in the incident, as you can see from this view, KPTK's car literally looking like it was being abducted by aliens just before the contact. But as interesting as that might be, it was still a very frustrating incident for both drivers nonetheless. KPTK did not let that get to him though, and he was straight back on the attack on the next lap when Fisi and Living Dead went side by side down the back straight. KPTK gained fast with a double slipstream and saw the opportunity to dive up the inside, but Fisi saw him coming and braked earlier, performing the switchback on the corner to get back ahead, while Living Dead, unfortunately for him, was stuck on the outside. KPTK though tried to get past his teammate once again, going side by side through the twist a bit at the start of sector 3. But Fisi kept the upper hand, and KPTK ended up misjudging his turn in to turn 16, which ended up with contact, and once again KPTK was behind the whole group, with Fisi left to defend in the middle of a 3-way between him, TRL Martin and Living Dead, coming through that reverse turn 8 from Turkey lookalike corner, and once again Fisi managed to keep ahead, continuing to frustrate the cars behind, to the extent that Living Dead made a mistake of his own, running wide after seemingly locking up on the curb, gifting the place to KPTK, who decided to take off once again, and he nearly got passed by Continents as well, but managed to hold on to 13th place. So while the guys out in front were pulling away at quite a rate, led by TRL Rosberg and his purple laps, the main action continued to be at the back of the field in the early stages, with Fisi still trying his utmost to keep TRL Martin and his teammate behind him, despite clearly lacking the pace around this track, especially in these conditions. It was over 5 seconds from this group and up to the next car at this point, but TRL Martin finally got an opening when Fisi made a mistake through the S's after taking a poor line, using his momentum to squeeze through on the outside of turn 7 to get the inside for the next corner and forcing Fisi to yield. And KPTK was also keen to follow him through as quickly as possible, and he got that chance when Fisi ran wide after the next straight, the Brit finally getting past his Norwegian teammate once and for all, and to make matters even worse for Fisi, on the final corner of the lap, a wild contrubuted appeared for a split second until he dropped back behind, but he managed to stick in the slipstream down the straight to get a clear run on Fisi up to turn 1, these guys trying to not get distracted by KPDK's breakdancing up ahead, and the Italian in the Caterham managed to get the move done for 12th place, while the Living Dead again had to stay behind in 14th. As the battle at the back had finally calmed down a bit, it was time to focus back on the leaders, where Limitless in second place was looking like he was starting to struggle a bit, having completely dropped away from race leader Tyrrell Rosberg, and he was also enduring severe pressure from Ricky C going on to lap 7, and a bit further back Citizen came into the pits from 5th place for a new set of intermediates, along with quite a few of the other cars, including Fisi, but there had been some poor communication from the Williams drivers, as they both ended up going into the pit box at the same time, meaning Fisi as the car behind had to wait for KPDK to leave, losing him several seconds and dropping him down to dead last in what was looking like a disastrous race for him. In the battle for second, Ricky C continued to pile the pressure on Limitless, but the Red Bull driver kept doing just enough to keep ahead in second place, and Ricky C not daring to go for an over-ambitious move, potentially throwing his race away. But he did move into the lead, at least temporarily, at the end of lap 7 when Limitless and Rosberg both went into the pit lane, Ricky C being the only driver to wait until the end of lap 8 to make his stop, but he did not get the sight he wanted when exiting the pits, as Limitless, by pitting earlier, had gained several seconds on him, and Ricky C even ended up behind the Sauber of F1 X360, who just about slipped through into 3rd place on the outside of turn 1. But Ricky did not want to stay behind him for long, as only half a lap later he got a great run on the back straight, even without DRS of course in these conditions, braking at a perfect point and hitting the apex to get his podium position back. But it was a tough task for him now to get any more than that, as the gap to Limitless had increased to 4 seconds. At the end of lap 10 now, and Citizen had been caught by Brošek, who forced his way up the inside into the last corner, and then somehow getting a better exit at the corner than Citizen, despite having taken a tighter line. Citizen though tucked back into his slipstream and could possibly have gone for the inside line into turn 1, but he chose the safer option on the outside, which allowed him Xmatic G to slip through on the inside, and Citizen ended up behind both of them. But that was quickly going to change, as Matti and Brošek got too close together on the exit, and Brošek ended up sidepod glitching off the track, dropping all the way down behind KPDK down to 10th place, a shocking turnaround for his race. But Xmatic G did not seem too affected, as he only lost out to Citizen, who made a mistake at turn 12 on the next lap, giving Xmatic G a chance to get that position straight back again. But Citizen did not want to give up, and they went side by side through the tricky complex of turn 13, 14, 15 and 16, but eventually ended up conceding the position after taking an unnecessarily wide line into the corner. And I don't know why I've taken this long to mention this actually, but this is the race where Xmatic G can win the championship, as he has currently got a 42-point lead over second place Ricky C, who is the only man who can theoretically take the title from him. His teammate Limitless is already out of it after all his connection issues, and Xmatic G just needs to make sure Ricky C does not score 18 more points than him in this race, which obviously is not looking too likely, as Ricky C is currently on course for 3rd place, with Matti himself currently in 5th. So it's looking good for him to take his first AOR F1 League title and become the first champion of this league who isn't named Noble2909. But as we can see on the screen now, Citizen and KPDK both have changed onto the dry tires at the end of lap 12, even though there is clearly still some water on the track, but those guys feeling that the crossover point has been reached. Although KPDK's teammate Fisi wanted to be a bit of an annoyance at the first corner when he came out of the pit, Fisi using his momentum to go round the outside of his teammate, but obviously having yet to pit. So the question was whether the dry tires was actually ready to be used on this track, and KPDK answered that question pretty quickly, as he ended up passing Fisi into the hairpin of turn 11, clearly having more grip than Fisi on his very worn into tires. So pitting at the end of lap 12 for dries seemed to have been the perfect strategy call, as KPDK then jumped 2 further positions up after Leopold and Maisie pitted on the next lap, and Xmatic G had also gone in the pits, and he ended up locking up coming out into turn 1, allowing Citizen to take back the position he lost only a couple of laps ago. But once again that was not going to last for particularly long, as when Citizen was challenged by Matti into turn 12, he ended up locking his inside front tire on the damp part of the track, again running wide of that corner, and this time KPDK also passed him for 6th place, which is quite an extraordinary comeback for the Williams driver that was battling towards the back of the field at the start of the race, to now be this close to a top 5 position. And you remember on lap 9 when I said Ricky C was 4 seconds behind Limitless? Well, at the end of lap 14, he had managed to close that gap to under a second, and they now both went into the pit lane together after a bit of a dubious pit entry, but we'll let that slide. These guys obviously waiting 2 laps longer than KPTK and Citizen to change onto the dry tires, and in Ricky C's case at least, that might be because he has chosen to change onto the less durable option tires, although Limitless actually went onto the primes. So split strategies for these guys now, and speaking of splits, the two also got split by F1 X360 suddenly appearing ahead of Ricky C going through turn 1. And Kurki seemed to be on a roll on his comeback, as later in the lap he went on to challenge Limitless down towards turn 12, placing his car firmly up the inside, getting the turn in nicely, Limitless trying for the cutback and almost getting alongside or into the next corner, but Kurki on the inside line had got to move on, and Limitless seemed to be struggling a bit at this stage of the race, as he was put under pressure again by Ricky C on the next lap into turn 11, but Limitless got a much better exit out of the corner, and instead of being challenged by Ricky C, ended up challenging Kurki instead on the other side of the straight. This time Limitless being on the inside for turn 12, Kurki hanging on the outside though, and Ricky C getting very close as well, but without really finding a way through, thinking about going up the inside of both of them, but Kurki defended well and managed to stay ahead. Ricky C and Limitless though going side by side through the next couple of corners, Ricky getting his nose ahead going into the corner, but he had to get the job done himself, with Limitless clinging on for dear life, but Ricky C pulling off a really impressive move around the outside, with the inside for long right hand to make the move stick. And Ricky was not done there. This was the part of the race where his choice to go on the option tires had paid off, and he moved past Kurki as well with an easy DRS pass to go up to second place, meaning that he was now scoring the 18 points he needed to have a chance at XMATG's championship still, but he was also still depending on XMATG himself not scoring any points. And speaking of XMATG, he was still running comfortably in 5th place after having pulled away from this battle here, where a Citizen was now trying to pass KPTK into turn 12, the Williams driver trying to defend the inside line, but he just couldn't get enough speed through the corner to hang on, but he got a chance to pass Citizen back going into turn 1 on the next lap, this time trying to go round the outside of the corner, but he ended up understeering a little bit too wide, and they ended up going side by side down after the turn 1 and towards the S's, the Citizen smartly using a lot of his curves to defend and get his nose ahead, KPTK choosing to back out rather than going side by side through there. So instead the battle once again came down to the DRS straight, where this time it was KPTK's turn to get the rear wing flap advantage, in lack of me finding a better phrase, and KPTK, despite running a little wide on the exit, managed to do enough to cover off the inside into the next corner, and then parking his car on the apex to leave Citizen with no way to get through. But through this battling, a Leobot had caught straight up to the back of him, and that was bad news for Citizen, as when he made an unforced error into the penultimate corner, Leobot was right there to take advantage and demote the Sauber driver to 8th place. So I guess it was about time that Citizen made his final pit stop on the next lap for another set of the prime tire. Another man that was starting to struggle on his tires after being very fast at the start of the stint was Ricky C, whose options were really starting to go off, and Limitless had managed to catch back up to him and now went for a move up the inside of turn 12, running a little bit too wide on the exit though, giving Ricky C a chance to come back at him if there was more life left in his tires at this point. He tried to hang it around the outside but ended up on the marbles, and there was no way back for him, Limitless moving himself back up to second place, although bearing in mind that Kurki pitted the lap before, and at the end of lap 21 KPTK went into the pit lane but rejoined the track only to find that he had been jumped by both Leobot and Citizen, who just about managed to sneak ahead at turn 1. KPTK though now had the tire advantage, and not only 2 laps fresher tires but also on the better compound of tires as well, so right from the start of the final stint he showed a clear pace advantage over both Citizen and Leobot, first passing Citizen with DRS on lap 22 before doing exactly the same on Leobot 2 laps later, at which point there was even more action just behind them on the DRS straight, with Brocek moving himself up past Citizen, and the Frenchman, after having started the race in 4th place, did now find himself in a slightly disappointing 9th. The race at Circuit of the Americas was coming to an end, with TRL Rosberg having completely run away with the race out in front, but the battle for second place was still going on, ahead of Ricky C, as Kurki, who had retained his second place after the pit stops, now got passed on the DRS straight by TRL Limitless, and Kurki then seemed to mess up his braking forward to turn 12 hairpin, going completely off the track and gifting Ricky C a free pass back up to 3rd place. Unfortunate for Kurki, who surely would have liked a podium on his return, and unfortunately for Ricky C, he was not able to get close enough to Limitless to challenge him over the next few laps, as we're now on the final lap of the race on board with Fisi, who passed the caterham of the Commentated up towards turn 1, perhaps eyeing a tiny chance at one point after what has been a difficult race, with TRL Maisie not far ahead, but skipping towards the end of the lap, and Tyrrell Rosberg with a huge margin wins the race at the Circuit of the Americas for the United States Grand Prix. Ricky C trying to get close enough to Limitless to have a go at second place, and those 18 points he would have liked to put the pressure on X-Matty G, but really he would have needed Matty to lose connection at this point, as he is sitting pretty in 4th place after having gotten past Crookie himself as well. And as Ricky C ended up finishing 3rd anyway, we can officially say that X-Matty G going around the final corner over there is the AOR Xbox 360 F1 League Champion of Season 8, taking up the crown after his former teammate Noble2909, Matty finally getting his hand on the Champions Trophy after having been runner-up in 4 out of the 5 previous seasons. So great day for him, and TRL Maisie was able to hang on to that final points position in this race, seemingly reasonably happy with that, unlike Living Dead finishing 13th, who did a bit of a spin across the line. But once again, it was this man, Tyrrell Rosberg, on the top step of the podium, his 2nd win in a row, after having hit great form towards the end of the season. He won the race by a massive 17.5 second margin over Tyrrell Limitless, who just managed to hold off Ricky C for 2nd, and then a further 9-second gap down to X-Matty G, the newly crowned champion, in 4th place. He hasn't won a race since Japan, but he's done enough to keep hold of the impressive championship lead he gathered in the early part of the season, and behind him Crookie getting 5th place on his return, ahead of KPDK, Leobot, Brocek, Citizen, and TRL Macy rounding off the point scorers. And here is the confirmation of the championship, X-Matty G on 249 points, a gap of 39 down to Ricky C, with only 25 left on offer next time out in Brazil, so no one can catch him now, and X-Matty G is the champion for this season. Ricky C though surely happy with sitting 2nd at this point, but he's only 11 points ahead of TRL Rosberg going into the final race, and then TRL Limitless is a further 8 points behind him. No position changes in the championship actually after this round, but there's an almighty midfield scrap going on for 5th place, with Tyrrell, Minty, Fisi, Brocek, KPDK and Leobot all in with a chance, and a couple of close battles down there in the lower positions as well. And then the Constructors' Championship, where not much is going on, but I think it's pretty clear by now that Red Bull of X-Matty G and Tyrrell Limitless are the Constructors' champions of Season 8. So Limitless, through his connection issues, might have lost out on the driver's title at least. That might be a slight consolation to get the Constructors. But that's it for the Season 8 United States Grand Prix. Next time for the final race recap of Season 8, we've got the Brazilian Grand Prix, which always throws up some crazy excitement. The battle for the championship title might be over, but there's still loads of other places to sort out, so make sure you join us for that. See you at Interlagos.